So we've talked about two areas: inattention. We've talked about hyperactivity, internalized, and externalized, which is more obvious. You may be very restless, always fidgeting. There's also the impulsivity aspect of ADHD. Now, what does this mean? So impulsivity is about your regulation of responding to a desire, okay, or a will to do something. When someone is impulsive, we generally understand to mean that when they have a desire or a trigger to do something, they feel compelled to do it. There's not really much time between think about it and start. It just happens. And so with ADHD, that's dysregulated. And so there can be symptoms or manifestations of impulsivity, such as high-risk behavior or reckless driving. And reckless driving doesn't mean you have necessarily lots of accidents, but you may get lots of speeding tickets or little knocks and bumps and scrapes. And you might put this down to, oh, it's okay, I'll pay for it, not realizing that actually you just probably didn't notice it in the first place because your mind was distracted by something else. So the impulsivity often manifests as risk-taking behavior, looking for a buzz, finding that when you want a buzz, you're not always good at measuring what the risk is. And this can be, especially in childhood, things like you might jump off a higher tree than other kids. You might not look while you're crossing the road. You may be more compelled to take drugs or find that your filter to deciding yes or no to trying mind-altering substances seems to be a lot more relaxed than your friends. And not from a logical place, but almost like you feel compelled to do it. If you have someone close to you who has ADHD, you might be wondering why they constantly need to be stimulated. So this has to do with one particular neurochemical called dopamine, which is just one of the many neurochemicals in the brain, which is related to regulating things in the front part of your brain. Now, dopamine is connected with satisfaction. So when you do something and you complete it, dopamine signals to you that, here you go, here's your reward. Now, where dopamine is out of balance or there's not enough of it, and this is exactly what happens with the ADHD brain, the person needs a constant supply of it from external activities. And unfortunately, what's happened is because our lifestyles have changed, where on digital media we get a reward very, very quickly, people's brains are getting trained to need that dopamine hit far more frequently than would normally be the case, whether you have ADHD or not. So, but in particular with ADHD, if you find that your loved one has ADHD and needs constant stimulation, one of the ways to help that is to get them connected to activities that give them a longer lasting and more meaningful dopamine boost, rather than the activities that are just a quick win. This is something you can do for yourself as well. So for example, connecting with activities that interest you, but are not necessarily rooted in digital media. Because often the activities that are on digital media will heighten your inattention and make it more difficult for you to focus, because digital media often splits your focus into many different directions. So the impact of the lack of regulation or difficulty with regulation is quite global. When someone has ADHD, we're looking really at key areas of the life and what impact does ADHD have on key areas of the life. So for example, the areas of life we focus on where we're measuring the impact of ADHD are education, work, relationships at home, relationships outside the home, friendships, and something that's very key and significant, your ability to relax, your leisure time, and your self-confidence or self-image. Now, these are all things where ADHD has a very strong impact, especially the more severe it is. So for example, with dysregulated attention, with dysregulated stopping and starting of activities, one might struggle with their education or completing tasks at work, especially those which are administrative in nature or not that interesting. With the dysregulation of emotions, this can have a significant impact at home, in relationships, with impulsively, for example, interrupting when emotions get heightened, or impulsively flying off the handle and not being able to regulate your anger or intense emotions. Your difficulties with regulating space and time also have a global impact on everything. So for example, if you can't read time properly, in the sense that it passes you by without you realizing how much has passed by, or you try and cram a lot of things into one short space of time, or end up double booking, this can really have an impact on relationships. This can have an impact on you managing yourself. So time blindness can be a really powerful thing that has a detrimental effect on relationships and your activities. And then of course, space, regulating your space. Are you often told that you're messy? Are you often told that you don't tidy up as you go along? And you find that you don't see the mess in the same way that other people do. So again, this is all to do with regulation. Regulating getting back to people on messages. Do your friends tell you that you forget about them, or don't keep in touch, or take too long to reply? Again, this is all to do with the dysregulation and not being able to respond to things in a timely manner. But for yourself, when it's time to unwind and to switch off, are you pushed by the urgency to always be doing something? Do you feel like the hobbies you pick up quickly become boring? Do you always feel like, or often feel like, you're not doing what you deserve the results for? That your results come too easily? Or that your results are because you can wing it? Because often the ADHD brain is very creative, can think quickly, can think outside the box. And so really winging it can be a real power for somebody with ADHD. But because things aren't planned, you often see imposter syndrome with people with ADHD, feeling like they don't deserve the success that they have. And then that has an impact on self-image and self-confidence, feeling like I don't deserve what I have. I don't trust that I'll complete the tasks that I've been given. And so there may be challenges around starting new tasks, a fear of failure or fear of not completing. There can also be a strong element of perfectionism, that everything has to be perfectly right before I start it, and a very strong, excessive, intense reaction to criticism. So ADHD really has a global impact. It's not just I'm a bit scatty sometimes, or a bit forgetful sometimes, or, I'm going through a period where I'm not sleeping enough and that's why I'm not able to concentrate. Something that's been there for a long time and affects many areas of your life. If you have any questions or topics that you'd like to hear more about, please pop them in the comments below and I'll be sure to answer them.